So welcome to First District Town Hall meeting. It is 2024, first meeting of the year. I'm your supervisor, Manu Koenig. We've got on the Zoom call with us our three First District analysts as well, Jamie Seahorn, Shane McKeithen, and Christina Glavis. And we are happy to have you all with us. I'll go ahead and jump right in here. So our agenda tonight are some general updates. And, to be honest, there's not too much that has emerged that I haven't talked about before. And so there's not too much in the way of general updates. I can tell you that at our next meeting of the Board of Supervisors, we'll be hearing the sustainability update. The Coastal Commission finally heard that. Those are some big changes to the general plan that we moved through now over a year ago. And they're coming back for sort of reapproval now that the Coastal Commission has made a few minor edits. Other than that, we are probably going to be having some discussions about bonding in order to cover these FEMA claims that have not come in, and so that we can ultimately have more cash to repair our roads. But that's about all I could think of in the way of general updates. I'm happy to answer any questions and comments that you guys have during Q&A. So I thought we'd use this meeting a little bit to talk about some of the issues that keep coming up, that have come up over and over again, whether it's at office hours in one particular, in different variations, or in outreach to the farmers market. And so I want to talk about a few different nuisance issues, a potential permit parking system to deal with abandoned vehicles, how we could regulate e-bikes to prevent conflicts, particularly on sidewalks, and also about short-term rentals. And then we should have plenty of time to get into anything else that you guys want to talk about. So with no further ado, let's talk about parking. So what is the problem with parking? Well, consistently, as I've said, I hear about cars that are just parked on the street for long periods of time. Like you have this beautiful example over on Dover Drive. This is actually one of about 5 cars that's being used as a storage locker. And you can see this nice box here. So someone is going back and forth to the car with more stuff all the time.
Manu,
Jamie,
can I interrupt really fast? Your slide has not advanced.
Oh, interesting. Not now?
No, you're still in the
Okay, hold on. Let me stop share and restart.
It hasn't. There you go. It just hadn't started yet.
Okay, hold on. Okay, you see
this looks better.
Is it advancing?
Here we go.
Okay,
that's
great.
Agenda.
Yeah. Okay, parking. You got it? Okay, great. Yeah, this is a car being used as a storage locker. We've also heard complaints of a couple auto body shops that are parking cars that they're ultimately going to work on public streets. There's issues with boats and RVs parked on public streets, or multiple cars per household, sometimes 5, 6, 7 or more. So what does our current law say? Well, it says that any operable vehicle on a highway or public right-of-way which has not been moved more than 1,000 feet for a continuous 72-hour period can be declared as abandoned and subject to removal. But of course, what happens here in practice is that CHP will go out and mark cars that haven't been moved for 72 hours. The owner, who typically will live nearby, will notice that and move the car 1,000 feet. And we're back to where we started. So it doesn't address these various cases I just mentioned. Also, I'll just point out in general that we do have a restriction against RVs on our streets for overnight parking, with just a couple exceptions, that the owner of the RV can park it in front of their home for 24 hours. Or if you're hosting someone, they can get a permit for 72 hours, but otherwise RVs are not allowed. Nevertheless, those really don't deal with any of the problem issues I mentioned. So proposed solution to this is that we create a new type of permit parking system where that says you have to have a permit if you're going to park for more than 72 hours anywhere in the zone. And if you're noticing the double I in permit here on my screen in the photo, you can thank ChatGPT. It's good at making images, but really bad at spelling for some reason. I keep trying to correct it. This was actually the best it could do after about 3 iterations. So in any case, under this program, there would be a limit of 1 parking permit per person. So maybe be attached to a driver's license, or maybe 2 per household. Some limit that prevents you from just getting whatever 8 permits. And the program would be for the entire Live Oak and SoCal, maybe even Aptos area. We did used to have the Live Oak parking program that was just operating in the Pleasure Point and kind of beach areas. The difference here is it would be a larger area to include all of Live Oak and SoCal. And the other difference would be that whereas the previous parking program really involved meter maids going out every day to enforce the program, this would largely just be complaint-based enforcement. So it would just give us more tools when you do notice that there's cars parked on the street for long periods of time that shouldn't be. That would also really make a difference as far as budgeting. So a big reason that the Live Oak program was ultimately disbanded is because it was pretty far into the red because of the cost of just doing the enforcement, and then challenges around collecting permit fees, especially from day users. So this would be a little bit of really just trying to crack down on cars taking up space for long periods of time on the street. And what permit fees we did collect, since we're not having to pay for meter maids driving around, we could put into additional vehicle mitigation program, like whether it's towing or demolition. We're always running out of those funds at the sheriff's office, particularly because it can be expensive to tow and dismantle large vehicles. I'll move on with an overview to the next problem, and we can then get into Q&A on all these things. E-bikes, a problem that hear about more and more, particularly unsafe use of e-bikes, including e-bikes on sidewalks or on East Cliff. I talked to a gentleman just the other day who had to jump out of the way of an e-bike while walking on East Cliff, and he made it safely out of the way, but then his dog, who he was with, the leash got caught in the bike and it took him down, and he ultimately broke his wrist. We also frequently see e-bikes riding the wrong way on the sidewalk or in bike lanes, or unsafe riding without a helmet. So looking at how we can address this, let's see, so our current regulations within the county are that we basically authorize motorized bicycles and scooters to operate in bike lanes under the county's jurisdiction. We do have precedent of prohibiting skateboards, roller skates, or roller blades in specific areas like SoCal Village, or in private or public parking lots where there's posted notice that they're prohibited. I guess in general, what I'm getting at here is that the county has the ability to regulate where e-bikes are used. So we can ban them from at least sidewalks and pedestrian ways. We may not have the authority to exclude them from bike lanes, even if we did want to do that. Some of the other potential ways to get at this, like licensure or impounding bikes when there's a violation, are actually not currently legal because under California vehicle code, bikes are considered personal property, not a vehicle. There has been some effort at the state level to change this. There was, and I'd have to cheat and go to the next slide here, but AB 530 was proposed last year and got stuck in committee, but would have required an e-bike license for in general, and not have issued to anyone younger than 12 years old. there could be an additional step that we considered an e-bike a vehicle, and then that would allow impound and requirements around registration, but those changes would have to come at the state level. So what can we do here at a local level? Well, like I said, we can disallow the use of the electric assist on e-bikes and scooters on sidewalks or other walking paths. We could try to reconfigure East Cliff by installing, making the bike lane that's on the street actually go the other way. So you have a contraflow lane, kind of like it's on Pacific Avenue for bikes, and then make the lane for cars that's going eastbound have a sharrow in it, so it's actually shared between cars and electric bikes and other light electric vehicles. And then say that electric bikes must use the street and really get them off of the walking path area. We can't require e-bike registration, but maybe we could incentivize some kind of education at the point of sale as well. Those are a few ideas there. And then one of the last issues we can talk about are short-term rentals. This issue comes up consistently from any constituent that lives anywhere near the coastal zone. And we've had some of the following difficulties with the current ordinance. The first is the difficulty in enforcing the noise ordinance. And that's because the sheriff's office will come out and always issues a warning under the current code before actually citing someone. And so because there's always new people in these vacation rentals, they are pretty much always allowed at least one warning. And so when you have constant turnover, you can have a lot of warnings and no citations. And then there's no citations on record when it comes time to someone going to renew their vacation rental permit. And so the noise issue persists, and there's no really consequences for vacation rental owners that haven't clearly explained rules or had other ways to just reduce noise with their tenants, the short-term tenants. Another issue that keeps coming up is that while there is a block cap of 20% in the designated areas, meaning like not more than 20% of all of the homes can be short-term rentals, there's not any like radius limit. So in some cases, a single home can be completely surrounded on all sides by vacation rentals because the block behind them will have a vacation rental, or the block in front of them. And so that can be quite frustrating for those residents. Also, the unhosted rentals, which means rentals where the whole house is rented and it's not actually someone's primary dwelling. They're only limited within the specific areas. The LODA is the Live Oak designated area, and it's really completely south of Portola Drive and East Cliff. So think north of East Cliff, Portola, you can actually, there's no cap on the number of unhosted rentals. And we are seeing places like Alice Street or other spots just nearby, just north of Portola, starting to get more and more unhosted rentals there. Homes are consistently marketed for sale as great vacation rentals and are often bought by investors, taking homes out of the local housing stock. I've heard of even dual doctor households getting out competed by investors buying properties as short-term rentals. And then once a home receives a permit in a designated zone or anywhere for a short-term rental, it can be renewed indefinitely. And so in those areas where there is a limit, others don't ultimately have the opportunity to receive a permit. We are making some good progress on the issue. The county recently hired a full-time code compliance investigator. His name is Tim Moreland. He was hired in October, and his job is specifically code compliance for vacation rentals. And so we did reach out to Tim earlier today and get an update on his progress. So since he was hired, he has issued 64 citations to unpermitted vacation rentals and created tracking system and process for monitoring monitoring those rentals. He's working closely with planning staff to create a process to revoke permits, and they now have 2 properties that they're actively in the process of revocation, and those properties are moving to a hearing by the ZA, or zoning administrator, in February. Tim has also reached out to Airbnb and is working with our state assemblywoman, Gail Pellerin's office, and to discuss removing all unpermitted vacation rentals from their platform. So this would be pretty major, since we can identify which vacation rentals in our area are operating without a permit, working with the technology provider themselves, whether it's Airbnb or VRBO, or even HipCamp, and just saying, hey, these need to be removed because they don't have a permit. And that would really, of course, cut them off at the knees for being able to rent at all. And require less kind of back end or after the fact enforcement on our part. He's also drafted some standard operating procedures for code compliance staff to outline the process regarding unpermitted uses and issuing citations, work on outreach materials, and improved cross-departmental collaboration. So we are getting some good movement within the existing ordinance and more enforcement of that now that we have a dedicated staff. I think I mentioned most of the issues with the current law. Right now, the current law really has a huge bias towards unhosted rentals. You can see that even within the Live Oak designated area. So 262 vacation rental permits shall be issued, but no more than 18 hosted rental permits. The difference between unhosted and hosted is hosted, it's actually someone's house. They're just renting a room and it's their full-time residence. Unhosted, the whole home is being rented. And a lot of times hosted rentals are actually a way that folks manage to afford their mortgage. A lot of young families I've heard of, Airbnb being an extra room in order to be able to buy a house here in our expensive county. And yet our law really limits hosted rentals in favor of unhosted rentals. In fact, only 250 permits are allowed county-wide for hosted rentals, which is less than all the unhosted rentals just in the Live Oak designated area. I also mentioned some of the issues with noise here. You can see the current code, which is prior to issuing a citation, responsible person or persons will be warned by a law enforcement officer that their noises they're making are offensive. All right, so some possible solutions with short-term rentals. We could create a moratorium on new unhosted short-term rental permits. This has been done in Lake Tahoe, also recently South Lake Tahoe, as well as Marin County. We could look at time-based limits to unhosted rentals. So for example, maybe limiting to a certain season or 90 consecutive days per year. That way we prevent this issue of having unhosted rentals going 365 days per year, 7 days a week, and as someone's in residential neighborhoods. I know Monterey County has limited unhosted rentals to a minimum of a 7-day stay in order to just reduce turnover. So rather than having potentially 7 different tenants or neighbors 7 days a week, you would only have one every week. So that would reduce annoyance a little bit. Ultimately, we could look at phasing out unhosted rentals while allowing for more hosted rentals. And the reason for the trade-off there is that ultimately, when we try to reduce the number of unhosted rentals before, the Coastal Commission actually said no, that would limit the visitor serving accommodations in the area, and they stopped us, or I should say they said they weren't going to approve that law. I think since that time, they've come to realize that it is having a major impact on neighborhoods, and that they should be more permissive towards hosted rentals and allow jurisdictions to more stringently regulate unhosted rentals. I'm not sure if we can redefine the noise ordinance in this way. It's something that we could look at, but having a specific clause that says that for hotel guests and other short-term rentals, that the law enforcement will actually issue a noise violation without prior warning. That could, we can look into that avenue as well. That is a few topics I thought we could discuss tonight. I'm happy to answer questions on anything else, but now I'm happy to first get your feedback on any of those three issues. And let's start there. And once we've exhausted that, we can move on to other topics. And if you are not familiar with Zoom by now, you can go ahead and hit the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and raise hand, and then I'll call on folks in the order that they raise their hand. And first up, we've got Joe Hall.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for your ideas on vacation rentals. And I think many of the folks that live in the neighborhoods that are impacted would appreciate it too. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm sure other people have comments, and just wanted to pass that along. And also thank you for East Cliff Drive. It is now smooth enough that my car, which is really old, doesn't totally rattle all the time.
You bet. Yeah, that resurfacing was long coming, and why we made it a priority. Glad you're enjoying it. Thanks, Joe. Astorina.
Oh, hi, this is Bonnie. Sorry, Astorina is my handle. They didn't address the parking for the vacation rentals, which are the biggest problem, because one person will rent a house and invite others. And since there's no oversight to that vacation rental, it's all up to the neighbors that live there. That is not fair. That's one thing. And the e-bike issue, I clocked an e-bike going 30 miles an hour down the street. And so 30 miles an hour versus a walking person isn't that a motorcycle? And should be safer. I'm glad at least they will be on the street. That will help somewhat. And
Yeah,
that's it.
Great. Thank you. As far as the parking, you can actually, I think, cite that as a code violation. Jamie, do you want to share the page that exists today specifically for vacation rentals, and how you can report violations?
Absolutely. I'll get those in the chat.
Great. Yeah, because limits on how many cars vacation rentals the guests can bring do exist in our code. I think it's they have to provide on-site parking, and so if there's a vacation rental that's consistently a problem, we can certainly cite them for that. And thanks to the fact that we now have someone whose full-time job it is to make sure this code is followed, I have a higher degree of confidence that we'll actually look into possibly even revoking at least issuing citations and possibly revoking those vacation rental permits.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. As far as the e-bike stuff goes, yeah, 30 miles per hour is a lot. What the e-bikes, like I said, are still not defined as vehicles under state code. And so it's actually even, there's some question of whether or not we can actually even limit them from a e-bike going 30 miles per hour from a bike lane. What is clear is that we do have authority as the county to keep them off of sidewalks and other walking paths. So we'll certainly start with that step.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Patty. Patty, are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I gotcha.
Okay, thank you. Last summer, there was a grand jury report regarding compliance issues in the planning department and included vacation rentals, red tags, etc. I have not seen that discussed before the Board of Supervisors. Did I miss that when I was out ill? Or has it not come before the board for discussion? Because it seems like there are a lot of issues that this new person could rectify, and it looks like this is the right person that's been brought on board. But another issue is the proliferation of Airbnbs. So not only do we have unhosted vacation rentals, we have lots of Airbnbs. And I don't know how the permitting is on that. I trust that most of them are paying hotel tax, but how are they regulated?
So typically, like we'd consider a rental. So there's an unhosted rental is an Airbnb is rented on Airbnb. What do you mean by an Airbnb, Patty?
One that is advertised as Airbnb, somebody can take over the house. I mean,
Mhm.
there are so many different configurations as to how it's being, used is confusing. I mean, I think it should be really direct. One, that they pay hotel tax, but also by definition. And I think there could be more clarity on that because I'm not gonna say who, but you can go to any party and people talk about their Airbnbs. They don't talk about their vacation rentals. They talk about Airbnbs. And I think that that's kind of something that while they pay hotel tax, it's still an impact on a neighborhood that should be regulated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we talk about short-term rentals, that definitely includes Airbnbs.
But I think
And
there are more of those than 268.
right,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what we're seeing is that our new code compliance officer is making sure to crack down on those.
Right.
So first of all, there's 262 unhosted allowed within the Live Oak designated area. But as I pointed out, one of the problems is that ends at East Cliff and Portola. So north of that, there's basically no limit to the number. So that's one issue. And then as far as compliance in the short term, we're looking at we do have a good tool to make sure everyone's paying their taxes. There's a software tool called Host Compliance, which basically combs through and sees what listings are up in the county in our area, and then double checks to make sure that we received a tax payment from them.
Right.
So everyone that's posted is paying taxes, but we're going to take it a step further, and that's what I was saying, was working with the platforms to actually remove listings that are not permitted.
Thank you.
And I'll double check on, it's quite possible, I think that grand jury report did come across our consent agenda just to approve some responses to it. I can take another look through it and see if there's issues that are worth bringing up again, or at the very least reviewing with our new code compliance officer.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, well, what's on all your minds? Anything else that we should be looking at as an office or adding to the work plan for the year? Part of adding these issues and how we're thinking about addressing them is that it's a great time for us to, like I said, think about the work plan for the year, and we want to make sure that we're including issues that are important to you. So, what questions, comments, or suggestions do you guys have?
Just a minute.
Marina.
I have a very silly question, but I'm sure you can help. I'd like to have a clarification on yard signs. I just happened to see somebody putting all these yard signs on Chanticleer Avenue last week or something at the edge of many houses. And so since I never know anything because I'm so new, is there some kind of regulation? It's like, can anybody go and put any yard sign anywhere, or does the person who owns the house or is living at the house, do they have to request it? Is there an answer for that? Because you could blanket anywhere with signs, but maybe the people that live there did not request them.
Yeah, it's a misdemeanor to place a sign without permission from the property owner.
It is actually a misdemeanor? Do you know if this is done anyway?
I, I think that, it certainly has been done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I was talking with our public works director. I know that, he's been removing or having crews move signs from the public property as well. It's actually a misdemeanor to place signs in the public right of way without.
Because
mean-
it's a form of advertising that basically
Mhm.
is not real. You know what I'm trying to say? You're trying to give an impression to people that is not really, that's the impression I got.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I wanted to find out more, because I don't think anybody's gonna go hunt down whoever, you're gonna knock at every house and say, did you request a sign? I mean, how do you do it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, I'll also discuss that with our public works director as far as removing signs in the public right of way and letting people know not to do that. Or, explain it's a misdemeanor. Okay,
I don't know.
other
I don't know how to press the hand sign deal, but I have
Okay.
another subject that I wouldn't mind bringing up, if I may.
Sure, go ahead, Gary.
So I live in the Summit area, and I think it's kind of statewide at this point in time. But the insurance companies are running roughshod over the population at this point in time. Tomorrow I have the great displeasure to fork over $14,000 for 1 year of homeowners insurance. And yet I've passed
my
every
God.
year of inspections from our local fire department. I don't have trees extremely close to my property. I have none hanging over my roof or anything like that. I remember I used to be in the insurance business myself. And I remember sometime after I got out, there was a pressure from insurance companies to just wantonly raise rates. And what happened when John Garamendi was the insurance commissioner, he essentially told them that you cannot cherry pick insurances in the state of California, that you may be losing in one segment, autos, but you've also got your commercial aspects, you've got your homeowners, you've got your other forms of insurance, life insurance, et cetera. But what's happening right now is just outrageous. And the policy I have to pay actually two policies that I have to pay $14,000 for don't even give me the same basic coverages that I've got now. So and
Yeah.
it's much more than my house payment. It's pretty outrageous. I mean, I'm gonna have to pay it for the first year till I figure
Mhm.
something out. But I mean, I imagine it could almost bankrupt some people. Talked to a broker the other night, in fact, and he said that along Scotts Valley Drive, he said they're essentially doubling a lot of the commercial policies over there from, averaging in maybe the 20,000 range up to over 40,000, and ones that don't have any trees or anything around them, just for them to try to, sort of recapture some of the losses that they've had in the major fires. But prices are crazy.
Yeah, that is ridiculous, Gary. 14,000 is for 1 year is a ton of money.
Yeah.
And I have heard lots of similar reports from other folks. Even at one mobile home park, I think it's gone up 5 times their parks insurance in the last few years. Ultimately, we don't have the authority to regulate insurance companies here through the county. So this is happening through the state, and Ricardo Laura, our insurance commissioner for the state of California. I think the big debate though that's happening is, ultimately, is the state, because we have some pretty stringent requirements on how much insurance can actually increase at this time, and the insurance companies are saying, well, we can't operate under those requirements, and we're just not going to insure people. We're not going to issue new policies within the state. So that's the tension. I don't know how to resolve this issue, and like I said, luckily it's not my issue to solve. But I would suggest reaching out to all of our state representatives. So Gail Pellerin, Assembly member, depending on what you said, you live in the Summit area.
Yeah. Mhm.
Then you probably, yeah, I believe Gail Pellerin is most likely your Assembly member, or State Senator John Laird. Reach out to them. I'm sure they're aware of the issue, but it doesn't hurt to put it on their radar one more time and make sure that you're getting any updates. And go check out Ricardo Lara, our State Insurance Commissioner's page, because I know he's working on this issue intensely.
Yeah, I've been there. And I plan on, advancing this as much as I can. And I thought I'd, bring it up here because people should be aware of it and also look out for their own insurance bills because they're doing the same thing to autos as well. They're trying to make up for it across the board. And interestingly enough, several years ago, when we had one of the major hurricanes on the East Coast, and my insurance rates happened to go up. My agent told me at the time, he said, well, Gary, don't think we're not paying for the hurricane damage on the East Coast. And I thought, well, gee, now they're blaming everything on California and California's fires, but I don't see that same logic being spread around because I've talked to people in other states and their insurance has not been going up the way it did here. And it's all high risk stuff with the California Fair Plan. So it's not even good coverage. No theft. I mean, it's, ridiculous.
Yeah, right. And of course, it's not a great solution pushing people onto the fair plan either. Like you
Right.
said.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I just wanted to bring it up and let people know about it.
Thank you for raising it. I wish I had an answer, but like I said, my only answer is that I can share is work on it with Insurance Commissioner Lara.
Sure.
Thanks. Joe, did you have another comment or suggestion?
Yes, just to that gentleman, Gail Pellerin is on the Assembly Committee working group that's been tasked with trying to work on this now. I don't know what exactly they're doing, but if he wants more information, he could call Assembly Member Pellerin's office. And I know they're being inundated with these calls, but she's on the committee in the Assembly that's trying to address this.
Good. I appreciate that information. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Does anyone else have a comment, question, or suggestion? Okay. Yeah, Alex. Go ahead.
Hey, Manu. Just one comment about the vacation rental issue. I know we've spoken about this a while back, but I think a good solution would be to eliminate the perpetual ability to continue to renew your license. I think it's it doesn't make sense for neighbors who even if they're in a restricted area like the Loda to be faced with just this a permanent violation of zoning. I do think it's important to be able to allow homeowners the limited right to rent their properties out. I think the flip side of having something like a LODA and a limited number of licenses is that it doesn't, give people who may want the similar right to rent their homes out the ability to do so if there's a hard cap. So it kind of goes both ways, but I really do think some ability to eliminate, if you have a 5-year license, maybe at the end of 5 years, you go back to the bottom of the list, and then the people who've been on the waiting list, get their chance. I think that is a fair way of dealing with the problem. because it doesn't make sense to just, allow an infinite number of vacation rentals everywhere. I get that. But it also, I think, once you have a cap, you really have to ask the follow-up question of what is fair about just getting in there early and having a permanent, like monopoly right, like it's like a
Mhm.
taxi cab medallion that there's
Right.
only a limited number of them, and even though they're not transferable, it's still super valuable, and that's something that the rest of the community is effectively granting that license holder, and it comes out of our pockets whether we see it that way or not. So I think 5 years, 3 years, 6 years, something like that is reasonable, but after that there should be some fair way of reallocating those permits.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Alex. Certainly that it's valuable and unfair for one person to basically be allowed a perpetual, or one home a perpetual renewal. And of course, if we said that you're going back to the bottom of the pile after 5 years, then it also would prevent purely investment driven property purchases,
Right.
because after all, you're not going to be able to perpetually run the business. So yeah, and I think that is actually would be a relatively elegant way to make a significant change without changing too much of the current framework.
Right. And I just have one more quick comment about the parking issue. I've had some luck. There was this one truck that was on Portola sitting. I don't even know what to call it. If it was in the right of way, it was practically in the bushes, but invading the sidewalk, and it was just sitting there forever. And someone was using it as a parking place, but I don't know exactly how often the truck moved. But one day I just was walking by it and I realized, hey, the bumper is actually in the sidewalk, and I called CHP and they came that night, and because it was, I guess, invading the sidewalk, and I guess I don't know what they did, if they went up to the guy's house or whatever, but the vehicle did move. So I think I empathize with people who have to deal with these old cars. That was one solution I think that worked for me. The other question is, I don't know, is there anything we can do when the vehicles are in people's front yards? I mean, is that something that is under planning auspices, or has an ability to like write a code that might have any reasonable ability to get enforced? When it's not in a driveway, but it's parked in someone's
Mm-hmm.
front lawn. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, first to your point about CHP responding, getting that car moved, super glad to hear it. And certainly in our interactions with CHP, they're eager to serve and eager to work. And when we've asked them to go issue citations, or really their role is to mark cars that have been there for over 72 hours, they'll happily do it. The challenge is that then those cars typically will be moved before further enforcement action can take place. And so it's not always the most like fruitful use of their time, but they're certainly trying and want to help in the right framework. As far as vehicles parked in front yards, I do believe that in one way or another that would probably be a code violation. I mean, whether it's the fact that even driveways are limited to some percentage of your frontage, like I don't know if it's like 50% or something, and so effectively parking cars outside of that area would probably be considered a violation. We'd have to look at exactly what part of the code that is, but happy to take it offline if there's particular property or properties where that's becoming an issue.
All right, thanks, Manu. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Thanks for the feedback. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. As always, if you need to get a hold of me or anyone else in the office, first.district@santacruzcountyca.gov is the best way to get a hold of us. And if something occurs to you after you sign off the call, please let us know. As I said, we're assembling the work plan for the year, and we want to get your ideas in. Thanks,
Wanted-
everyone. And yep.
Sorry,
Jamie, you got one
Vicky
more thing?
Bertan, I think, does have a question.
Oh, okay. Vicky, please, by all means.
Vicky, do you want to go ahead?
Okay. Well,
Got you in there. Sorry. Thank you.
actually, it's Dan.
Oh,
You're
hey,
stuck.
Dan.
You're stuck with me. Hey, I think I have two questions, but I'll try to get them out quickly. Number one, the project of improving the handicapped corners around from sidewalk to pedestrian walkways and whatnot has been going on for some time. And I know there's been some chatter about how long it's been taking and so forth and so on. And it really does seem like it's kind of gone on forever, and it creates a certain number of traffic hazards at these various corners. And I like to, I know that people have complained about that impact on the traffic and pedestrian traffic for that matter. Is anything being done to speed up that process, to make it seem to the layman it's a more efficient process so it doesn't go on for months at a time? That's question number one. Question number two is,
Let him answer.
can I do question number two? Do you want to answer that one first?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Question number two is, as you know, we live up here in Santa Cruz Gardens, and the property at Soquel Drive and Thurber Lane is on the target list for I think low-income housing project. That's the house property. And we are very concerned about the traffic impact up here in Santa Cruz Garden, since we're one way in and one way out. And what measures will be taken to control a good flow of traffic from Soquel Drive, around Soquel Drive and Thurber Lane, when those, if and when those projects actually take place? Because we know our experience is that these housing projects, although they're well intended and certainly necessary, they don't really provide for the right amount of parking for the number of residents who be living in those communities. And the traffic that will be impacted because of these projects for our area is really going to be rather overwhelming from what we see. So I'd like to know what's being done to help mitigate or prevent those kinds of traffic parking issues. That's it. That's my questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, let me start with the first one. I assume that when you talk about improving the handicapped access and the ramps and stuff,
Yes.
you're referring to Soquel Drive, that project there, but since that does include like nearly 100 of those types of sidewalk improvements.
Right.
That is supposed to be going on through pretty much the end of this year. We can, if there's a specific site that you're concerned about that has been under construction for, you feel like a unreasonable amount of time, and you want to bring that, is there one that jumps to mind?
Well, of course, the one at Soquel Drive and Thurber Lane has just been started, and I think there's one across the street and so forth. And it's not that I object to the project. I understand why it's happening, but it's the length of time it takes and the way they barricade, so to speak, the corners really creates a bit of a traffic hazard for cars and pedestrians. And it seems like these projects just go on forever rather than being managed in such a way that they progress quickly.
Yeah, I can talk to the project team about that, what their schedule is to actually build those improvements, and make sure that they're not doing setup time and barricading it off if they're not actually going to be actively working on it.
Thank you, because I did see some chatter in the Sentinel a couple of weeks ago or whatnot, people complaining about the same kind of thing. The process is just taking way too long. So, and I understand construction projects and management and all that, but this seems like it's a bit out of control.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. So I'll do that. As far as housing at the Thurber and Soquel Drive site, I mean, right now there's just there's some very initial interest. I have not even had a chance to sit down with the team that's interested in building something at that site. I know that their project is highly dependent on winning a large grant for affordable housing in our community. I know there's a number of people competing for that, so it's definitely not a sure thing at this point. Regardless, whatever project and design comes forward for that site will have to go through, the typical discretionary approval process, including doing a traffic impact study, and then look at what projects might help to mitigate any traffic impacts. But we'll definitely be looking at the ways the traffic will flow and parking and the way people will access that site, and looking for ways to minimize its impact on access on Thurber, since, as you pointed out, it's a one way in, one way out to the community. And of course, part of the thinking with creating some kind of permit parking for the area is that we would also prevent, with the sort of lower parking requirements in general, preventing people from just saying, oh yeah, sure, we don't need a dedicated parking space, and then taking up additional space on the street that they're actually committed to a low car lifestyle, and using those new green bike lanes we put on Soquel Drive, or the improved bus service.
Okay, we'll keep our eye on that one. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll certainly keep you and the rest of the neighborhood informed as we learn more.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Jacqueline. Jacqueline, do you have a comment or question?
My question is, I'm becoming more and more curious about the pedestrian bike overpass. I don't remember where the funding, and I'm just really curious what the vision is for that, since it doesn't, the one on Chanticleer, since it doesn't seem like many people walk or bike that way. So I'm curious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as far as the funding goes, it's paid for by a combination of the half-cent sales tax that we all as voters passed in 2016. That's what's called Measure D. And so it funds a number of different types of transportation projects, including local streets, as well as highway, rail trail, some money for rail corridor maintenance and study, and some funding towards the bus. So kind of whole slew of projects. And then we got some large state grants for construction of the highway project as well. So that's what's paying for the bike and pedestrian overpass. The vision is really to make that whole neighborhood we were just talking about, Santa Cruz Gardens, Thurber, Winkle Park area, to give it a safer way to access the whole coastal side of our community, given that there's that the overcrossing at the Soquel Drive exit there can be a bit intimidating to a lot of folks, especially people who are not as confident on a bike, or folks with young children. And so the idea is to create a safer, lower stress alternative to really connect the north half of the Live Oak community with the coastal half. And we do need to get additional funding in place to complete the sidewalk and bike lanes, and ultimately a resurfacing of Chanticleer there in front of Gray Bears as well, leading up to the overcrossing, so that it's kind of the completed facility. And certainly one of the projects that we could look at if housing does get built on that Thurber and Soquel Drive site. One of the mitigation projects we could look at is helping to pay to complete the bike and pedestrian improvements and accessing that bridge.
Okay, that was my second question. So, and then would people be going down 17th or down Chanticleer on the ocean side of the highway?
On Chanticleer.
Chanticleer. Okay.
Yeah, because it's, as you can see, it's that U, and ultimately, it'll, you know, for lack of a better word, dump people onto Chanticleer there between the sheriff's office and the new, this Pure
Yes.
Water SoCal project there that's going in on the corner.
Okay. And when is that expected? This portion that goes over the highway, when is that anticipated to be completed?
I'd have to look if there's the whole highway auxiliary lane project for SoCal Drive to 41st is expected to be completed in middle of 2025 timeframe. I'd have to look if there's a separate expectation for completion just for the bridge, if they would actually open that sooner.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You bet, Jacqueline. Thanks for the question.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, any other comments, questions, or suggestions? All right, seeing none, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Again, you can reach us at first.district@santacruzcountyca.gov. And yeah, great. Have a great rest of your week. Good night.
Thank you. Night.
Good night.